Let me unmute myself. Hell, how's it going, everybody? Another Thursday night. So yeah, a lot of stuff going on Twitter. Usual back and forth between people. Typical topics, right? We have quantity versus quality. That one came up today, per the usual. And then we've had some people still complaining about elitism, and now some folks are even getting into, well, can our new creators not inspired by Western creators in general because of drama and all of that. So I want to touch on that because I think that's just absolute nonsense. Um, when it comes to like legendary creators, Marv Wolfman, Frank Miller, Alan Moore, I could give two shits about their ego, about their politics, even if they were dramatic and they had all these interpersonal issues in the industry. I wouldn't care. Why? Because they're legendary creators and I want to learn from them. And I love their work. It's that simple. So and again, the drama isn't really there in the mainstream. The drama that these people are referring to is indie. And why are they pushing that narrative? Well, it's again to try to peel backers away from those people and garner them for themselves. So no shocker there. It's the same narrative with all these folks that are anti crowdfunding all of a sudden, even though their entire idea to create a comic and try to make profit from it is derived from crowdfunding and the success that people have seen in crowdfunding. So, yeah. So we have Mr. Tom Tuttle's Traveling Salvation Show in the chat. Welcome, man. We're going to be looking at his campaign later on. He's got a fantastic looking campaign. It's actually a Western on Fund My Comics. So we will be taking a look at that. Camera all situated here. Not. All right. So first topic I want to talk about. Some folks might remember the EFAP that we did last week of Tyler Carpenter's, Draw and Talk channel, and that was stemmed around the topic of elitism and all of that. And I guess he caught wind that I EFAP'd it. No shocker there. Not like trying to hide it or anything. And so he had some thoughts on the EFAP and me in general. And so we'll EFAP that because that was actually kind of funny. So let's pull that up. Hate when the cameras gets shifted. Good enough. All right. Share my screen here. There we go. So I think where I have it time stamped is pretty much right where he brings up that EFAP and has some choice words or comments about me. So let's check in on this. Let me know if there's any audio issues. I apologize for my voice. I had horrible allergies this week, and yeah, do not sound normal. All right, let's go back a little bit.
Or how is everyone doing? This is what happens when you don't stream as much. You don't stream.
Don't know why I don't see it. Hold on here. Ooh, there we go. All right.
As often as I do. You don't make as much I need to get back to making content, but I'm so busy. And the world of comics is crazy. I feel like everyone is just I say this every
What's
week
going
and
on,
I'm going to
Michael?
keep saying it. I just feel like everyone's just trying to fight everyone. Like literally I saw I'm just seeing people fight. I found out today that like BA Turner just does like will just stream about me. I didn't know that. I have BA Turner blocked. He thinks it's because he called me out because I was always like do on time books, and then like he's like, yo, your first like 2 books were late. I didn't know that actually. So I was like, oh, so I've kind of like dropped, like I don't ever say to myself like, yeah, I don't really promote myself anymore as like I do on time books, because the truth
You didn't realize he was late? Kind of strange.
is it's like, yeah, you know what, my first couple books were late, and every now and then, yeah. um Currently, are my books ever late? I think I always get the digitals out at least on time, and then the physicals out a month later, so
What's going on,
give or
Katie?
take. But yeah, no, it's so it's funny, like I didn't know BA Turner streamed about me or watched my streams. Hi, how you doing, BA? No, I blocked you because you would always just cause problems. I would tweet out something, and then you would tag Ethan, and I'd be like, "Yo, Ethan, you watching this?" It's like I'm not even talking about.
So to add some context to that, so let's see, probably a good, yeah, over 2 years ago, I started noticing that he kept taking veiled shots at EVS and complaining about him on Twitter. And one of the times I just tagged him like, hey, why don't you just say it to him? I didn't really know their past. Um, obviously I've had some interactions, but he was just constantly like complaining about him. And so I'd just tag him and be like, hey, feel free to comment on this. You'd probably appreciate to know, someone's talking shit about you. So, and apparently that annoyed him, but he didn't block me until I called him out on having late campaigns. But it's so funny that, me just calling him out for talking shit about someone was causing problems. For anyone that's observed how I interact with people on Twitter and on here, it's quite politely. And so, yeah, I don't believe I ever caused problems, but apparently that bothered him to be called out that, hey, you've had late campaigns and you constantly complain about late campaigns, and then you complain about drama and creators attacking one another, but you're literally attacking and taking shots at a creator over and over, and you just don't like to be called out. So, and yeah, I don't watch your streams. The only reason why I EFAP'd that particular stream was because you made a tweet about, elitism and gatekeeping in comics. And I think that narrative is complete horseshit. Whenever I see a tweet or a narrative that I believe is complete horseshit, I typically comment on it because I don't think that narrative is good for the space. I think it's good to counter bad arguments and bad points. Again, these are my opinions, but I do think that it's good to do that in the space. And so you made a tweet about it, and then you made a video about it. So yeah, I caught wind of it and checked it out. So,
About him or you, why are you bringing this up? So I was like, you know what, get BA Turner out of my life. And it was great. And then I was watching Larry
catty
stream this
response.
afternoon, and he's like, yeah, you know that BA like he like well EFAP Tyler, and it's like I didn't know that. So BA, how you doing? How you doing? I don't really take anything that BA says seriously because he's not a comic book creator. He's just I don't know why he's in the comic book space. Uh,
That sounded very elitist. Ooh. Now, wasn't he constantly complaining about elitism and gatekeeping in comics? But he's saying that I'm not a real comic book creator and he doesn't know why I'm into comics. It's a weird thing to say. And I also remember he got offended that someone called him a tourist. I almost feel like that's what he's trying to call me. And I find this funny when people, again, he's taking a shot at a new, smaller creator, right? People hate when that happens, apparently. And it makes it sound like, oh, you have to have a published comic to consider yourself a comic book creator. Well, if that's the case, then there's some popular YouTubers out there that you can't consider a comic book creator because, well, it's not published. And see, I'm always very specific. I've never called myself a published comic book creator. Like, I just say I'm creating a comic because that's literally what I'm doing every day. So, someone can call themselves a writer and not ever publish a novel or publish a comic. If they're actually writing, they're a writer. When it comes to novels, yeah, I'm a published novelist. Not that I would call myself that, but technically I am. Um, so yeah, but not sure why he's so bothered that I'm in the comic space. I mean, why am I in the comic space? Because I love comics. I love storytelling. I love creative arts, and I want to translate my Vigilantes Creed's story into comic form and create the best comic possible. Uh, that's basically it. It's called passion. I didn't know I needed any credentials um, to join the indie comic space or to be an indie comic book creator, but yeah, it's weird to have your feathers ruffled by someone just entering the space, regardless of their past or their credentials.
um, but also like I don't really take a lot of things seriously these days because at the end of the day, I feel like people just aren't having fun with their comic making. I feel like no one is having fun making comics these days. Everyone's complaining, everyone's fighting, everyone's trying to fight with each other. Uh,
I mean, I don't know about him, but I'm having a blast making my comic. I love interacting with my artist. I love the creative process, and it's the like one of the few things I look forward to every day or throughout the week because I have a day job and a lot of responsibilities and pressure, and you know I don't care what drama there is in the space or what people have issues with one another. As long as me and my artists are copacetic and we're having a good time, I mean, this is a blast. I mean, if you let the noise affect you making your comic, I mean, that's sad. But that's not an issue for me. And I know all the other folks, um, that I interact with a lot, like Richard Ombre, Patrick Quinlan, Salty Draws, all those guys, they love creating comics. You don't see them, nobody complains about creating comics outside of the fact that they're expensive. That's an understandable complaint, but everything is expensive in America for the most part. Um, but yeah, I don't see people complaining about the creative process. If they're complaining about drama, that means they're choosing to consume it. They're choosing to click on a tweet and consume the replies, consume the content. And I did a video about this. I don't know, something titled about drama, just about how you choose whether or not you consume the drama. And for 90% of us, we're not involved in it. Doesn't actually impact us. But it can be entertaining, right? It's like a live soap opera in our little space, but either you enjoy it, you observe it, whatever, or if you hate it, like don't watch it. Just learn to scroll. Not that complicated. It does not need to impact you. Um, Like me personally, I get annoyed, sure, by some of the narratives that people push and some of the comments that I see. Sometimes I decide to comment on them. I'll see an example of that soon. Sometimes I don't, but I don't let it impact my day outside of a little bit of time here and there. But yeah, I don't understand how you could let that stuff make you miserable or not enjoy the space unless like you're directly involved in it or something. But for most of us, that's not the case.
Um, I like, people accusing others of like AI art, people saying, oh, like you're doing this. Oh, you
I'll comment on the AI thing. If some art that gets put out there by an indie comic book creator or indie or a comic book creator in general looks very suspicious of I don't have a problem with people calling it out. Um, I mean, the artist can or the creator can simply show the pencils typically, um, or some roughs, something in process to prove that it's not AI. But you know what? If they admit or it gets proven that they're using AI, hell yeah, it should be called out. Because if they're going to go turn around and charge people their hard earned money, especially charge full price when it's not even hand drawn, that they're literally just using prompts, yes, people should call it out. Because in my opinion, those people shouldn't get backers because it's false advertisements. Because typically they don't even admit in their campaign or they just kind of bury the lead, that AI is involved. And I think that is one of the worst things for this space is AI. We'll talk about that in more detail on another stream, but I if it's obvious, yeah, people should question it for sure. Because if people are trying to sneak that through their campaigns, that's a problem. Absolutely, especially if people are going to spend money on it.
you should be making your book like this. It should be priced like this. At the end of the day, I don't know. It's maybe I'm getting older. Maybe I'm just getting less into the scene. I just feel like I feel like I'm tired. I feel like it's just tiring now. I've lost the passion to keep talking about comics and whatnot. There's still a lot of topics though that like I'm very passionate about still. I'm very still, obviously very passionate about marketing and business. I very passionate about trying to equal the playing field. Talking like when it
Equal
comes
the
to like
playing
is
field.
quality subjective and stuff, very passionate about that. Manga and comics, very passionate about that. So, occasionally I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna
So that's the gist of that topic there. I just wanted to go over his comments about saying I'm not a real comic book creator. So much elitism, but it doesn't offend me. It just makes me laugh because it's factually incorrect. But I mean, that's like the second, stream that we've EFAP'd part of it, and it just seems so like down and just like I don't know, depressing. But I don't know. Um, I mean, if you're not passionate about what you're doing and your focus is just or all you enjoy is marketing and the business side of things, um, yeah, I mean that's to me just sad. Of course, you want to make money, you want to be good at marketing, but the driver should always be your passion for art, for the medium. Because I think without that, your marketing in your business is gonna suffer. But yeah. So let's check in with the chat. I see we have good old Agitator came out of retirement. Good thing I don't have an active campaign that he can try to report falsely, but we have Mr. Niobe in the house. Let's see what he's got to say. See, he's complaining about one gun copyright striking his channel. That's ironic that he has an issue with that, but he's okay with flagging and reporting campaigns and getting them taken off of IGG. He did admit to doing that. So there's some irony there. Anyone can rep any group that doesn't make anyone else responsible for their actions. But it's funny. Let's see what else. What else? We got several responses here. Hence all of the typos. Yeah, if he's going to, if Tyler were to copyright strike me, that would be extremely weak and sad, especially considering he's talking about me in this video. So I feel like I have the right to respond. See what else? Yeah, see, that's quite funny. Niobe's banning people in his chat because he can't take the heat and the agitation. But man, does he come in here in EVS's chat just full throttle, full throttle. He seems agitated himself here. Yeah, well, that's the thing. I released a mini comic. And I've been clear the whole time. It's not a traditional comic, right? Um, it's definitely different. It's more meant to display the characters and just give visuals as reference material the, for the novel. But again, anyone that's in the process of creating a comic, in my opinion, is a comic book creator, published or not. No, it's called self-publishing. Anyone can self-publish. You do not need to be mainstream or have a third party publish it for it to be considered published. And I don't even think you have a third party anymore, do you? I don't know. All that diamond stuff. Did you lose your badge, your published badge? I mean, you're working with a tiny publisher who's yeah, nothing special in my opinion, but oh man, back and forth. What's going on, Mikey Goats? Welcome. Thanks for being here. uh, absolutely. I agree. I agree. Yeah. Being published is published. Doesn't matter if it's traditionally or self-published. If you've done an Indiegogo campaign and you've shipped your comics to someone, you've published a comic. And this is indie. Clearly, we're not latched to the teat of the mainstream. We're trying to prove that we can do things just as good or better than them because of their lack of quality and interesting storytelling for the last 10 or so years. But yeah, being published is published. And there are plenty of indie comics, as we know, that are better than mainstream comics. So, and he's just going back and forth about blocking. Kobe Mac, welcome. Thanks for being here. It'd be a good documentary on Tubi about indie comics. Wendy Pinney and Erica Larson are in it. Pretty cool. You may want to check it out. Yeah, definitely. Thanks for letting me know about that. Ah, yeah. Glad you got the digital novels. Definitely let me know in the comic. Yeah, let me know what you think. I'm always looking for feedback. Thank you for your support. Yes, Tom Tuttle is right. Everybody back the Maniac on FMC. We looked at that last week, and everything's been edited and is approved on the campaign. He's got the preview pages straight on the campaign, so definitely go to Fund My Comic, back the Maniac, which some arseholes falsely reported and got removed from Indiegogo. So yeah, yes, go away if you want. Like 2 weeks ago, you were begging me to debate you, and here you are trying to debate everybody in the chat. And now, unless you like get really like you start going after people's families and do some really nasty verbiage, I don't ban anybody, even though there's plenty of agitators that appear. Oh, welcome, Andrew Campbell. How's it going? I love when the chat just gives it right back to him. Savar, welcome. Thanks for being here. Miss 99. How's it going? Thanks for being here. What's with the self-publishing hate? Salt in the boo-boo, sour grapes? Yeah, I know. And that's the thing. I'm pretty sure when you released Niobe 1 or Gaobi 2 or whatever, it didn't go right to Antarctic or whoever, press that you use. So do those not count? Are they not valid comics? Are they not real comics because you self-published them? Oh my. And yeah, your first couple campaigns couldn't even outfund my first one. So, and I didn't even have a real full comic, just novels. Oof. Anyways, that's true. Yeah, some people do really, really well self-publishing. I mean, look at EVS, look at Shane Davis, right? Look at Billy Tucci, all those guys. They make a good living self-publishing their comics. So proof is right there in the pudding. Oh, what's going on? One gun? Or get a robo shin wound? That's a mouthful. Uh, Larry would know about a mouthful. Jokes. Well, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, he was talking some mad crap about you up in the chat. What's going on, Shelton? Thanks for being here. What's going on, Johnny Douglas? Yeah, at work, dropping the leave and algorithmic like and comment. Thank you for that. Make sure you don't have too much fun at work. Right. Yeah, I would debate Larry too. I've offered it to him. He's asked like a million times. I'm like, dude, we can set it up on a third party channel. And he just kept saying, no, 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 I can't do that. I'm like, okay, we can do it on my channel, but let's at least announce it, give it some time so we can get some viewers, make sure that more people see it. And it's just like, no, now, now. It's kind of like a child, but yeah, he's not up to it. Now you guys can duke it out in the chat. All right, so I want to EFAP a Eric July little video, and this is tied to that topic of whether or not it's Eastern or Western creators are inspiring new creators. One thing I've talked about a couple times, briefly is I think more teenagers, more young adults, and young adult creators are being inspired by Eastern creators or manga, right, anime because well they grew up watching it and there's just been a lot more attention on anime, especially with Dragon Ball Z, right, Pokemon, and all these other properties, being on TV that you end up creating what you consume. Some of us grew up watching Spider-Man, animated series, and Batman on TV, and there just wasn't much anime on or any right outside of Pokemon and Dragon Ball Z on regular TV. So you end up being inspired by what you consume. And then I ended up consuming Smallville, Snyderverse, right, Marvel movies, and all that. And but again, there's a lot of people that gravitated towards anime, and I think that pushed them towards manga, and then that's what they ended up creating. I don't think it's because of any drama or lack of creativity in Western comics, let's say pre 2010. I think there was plenty. It's just that there was more available anime and manga, and that just started to boom and leak into, you know, Western society. One thing I was thinking about the other day too, which I think is interesting, is I think a lot of people, gravitated towards animated TV shows that were based off of comics and comics themselves because the visualization was so much more intriguing and detailed than live action at the time, right? Live action back in the 80s and 90s was not that great, right? CGI and all that wasn't much of a thing. You did have, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, You did have some, movies that did such a good job with the costume designs that those were phenomenal. But outside of that, a lot of them were just kind of cheesy. And so people focused, were still focused on consuming comics. Now you get to 2010, post 2010, you have some phenomenal movies with amazing effects, amazing CGI, and amazing, costume design, like Man of Steel, right? Like the Hulk, like all these films. And so I think the younger generation, let's say 13 and up, they were less likely to pick up a comic book because of how good these films were, how visually appealing they were. And so I think that is part of the shift. You still had the people my age and older that were reading comics because historically they read comics. They loved comics. But again, the younger kids are going to go towards what's more visually stimulating and what's readily available. Those movies, those live action TV shows, even were right there. And so I think they just focused on that. Now, you have that, the combination of that plus the influence of anime and manga and the availability of it. I think that's part of what has damaged or comic consumption, mainstream comic consumption. And then you compound that with shitty art, shitty storytelling, less of a focus on legendary creators, more of a focus on cost cutting and outsourcing art and writing. That is to me what has caused mainstream comics to bleed out pretty severely. Now, mainstream superhero films are now kind of going in the opposite direction, right? The CGI is going down in quality. The writing is going down in quality. The sales is going down. So you could see a return of some comic book readers or possibly the younger generations, picking up comics again. Who knows? But to me, it has nothing to do with the Western creators on why some new creators are being inspired by the East. It's simply because they watch anime that push them towards manga, and obviously they create what they consume. But people like me who are inspired by DC characters, Marvel characters, gravitated towards Frank Miller, towards Alan Moore. Again, I could care less what their politics are. I could care less what they believe in. I could care less about any drama that they're tied to because they're masters of their craft, and I love their stories. I love their characters. That's what matters. That's what inspires me as a creator. Just like the Snyderverse and some of those monumental films, in my opinion, the Nolanverse. That's why they motivated me and inspired me, is because of the quality and because of the storytelling. Again, could care less behind the scenes what their politics are, all of that. I could care less about any other drama. I care about their content, what they're making. So, anyways, let's check out Eric's thoughts on that topic. And yeah, I think there's some motivation and narrative that's being pushed on the indie comic space. I mean, I think that's why he is releasing, such a video. But yeah, let's check that out. Man, Iobi and One Gun really going at it. Here. All right. There's some new people in the chat too. We have David Skyzo. Welcome. Thanks for being here. I said they're less likely to pick up a comic because of movies, but more likely to create a manga because of TV shows. I think it's both. I think there's a lot of people younger than me. So let's say sub 30 that have just gotten really into anime, and that made them gravitate towards manga, right? Because the art style in anime is very similar, more youthful characters, more youthful and over the top, action scenes and all that. So and there's people that consume both manga, anime, and mainstream comics and film and all that. But I do think it's a few things that are pulling people away from comics in general. Also have House of Osborne. Welcome. Oh, it's Larry Niobe. Oh, yes, it is. Oh, yes, it is. Oh, we have Aaron Immortal Rising. Everybody, make sure you go to Fund My Comic and pick up Immortal Rising #2. That is a fantastic looking comic. I'm going to be reading that soon and reviewing that here. So definitely go back that. What else is going on here in the chat? Hey, I welcome everybody. Thank you for being here. Let's see. So Elgamil says the manga gets creative stories and makes the characters actually look good. The price per page is great for black and white. There's a constant stream for it too. Yeah, and that's true. There's a lot of it. It gets released frequently. There's not a long wait time in between issues, so that is positive. And yeah, I would say I personally have not read a lot of manga. Really haven't read any. It's just not my cup of tea. But yeah, I've heard the storytelling is done quite well, and it's definitely it seems engaging for young adults and teenagers. But again, there's just not a lot of fantastic comics being released by the mainstream. They've shied away from a lot of the legendary creators. They're not willing to pay top dollar to maintain those creators, and so there's just less intriguing releases of comics, and the art doesn't look as good. And there's not a lot of new, unique characters being created either, right? They're just relying on all of those legacy characters, which can work, but at times doesn't work. I do think they need some new, fresh characters. I think what Ghost Machine is doing is fantastic. Think we need more of that. And if DC and Marvel could have done something similar, it would have helped them. But yeah, I'm not sure what you're referring to, so you'd have to be a little bit more specific there. What else we got here? Oh, we have Mr. Frederick Gumont. Welcome. Hail to Canada and you. So Kobe Max says, I myself am not in CG. I like BA's opinions. Well, thank you for that and talking points. So that's why I tune in. Plus, we're both more in Snyder fans. Hell yeah. And that's the thing. Most of us in CG are not like, I don't know anyone that doesn't welcome non CG or whatever people to their chat or converse with them or even back them or promote them. Um, So for me, it's just I network with a lot of folks in CG. They support me, I support them. It's networking, but it's also content as well. So, that I appreciate there are folks that aren't necessarily CG that come here, hang out, support me. So thank you. Stuff in the chat. I'm not sure. I just know, for me personally, when I think of EVS in the mainstream, I think of Green Lantern and Flash specifically. Yeah, I know some of it, even his Batman work is in the New 52. But yeah, he's obviously got a lot of notable mainstream comics in his resume. So, all right, so let's check out this video. Let's see what you guys think of this. Let me know if there's any audio issues. Here we go.
What's up, y'all? I'm Eric July, the founder and owner of Riververse Publishing, and there's something that I want to talk about today, and that's the importance of having a healthy creative industry in the West, especially when it comes to art and comics. Now, when I say healthy, I'm not just talking about popularity. I mean an economically sustainable and thriving space, one where the relationship between creators and customers is strong, where it feels encouraging for new talent to enter, and where the industry is actually growing.
So, this is where I immediately start to think he is more referring to indie comics, right? Because most mainstream creators, right, they don't interact with the customers, right? They're not having conversations with people on Twitter, right? You don't see Frank Moore or Frank Moore, geez, Frank Miller, Alan Moore. You don't see Jeff Johns. You don't really see anyone, maybe a little bit, excuse me, from like Scott Snyder, you see him interacting, and also Mark Miller, but for the most part, there's not a lot of interaction between at least the legendary creators, right, and the customer. Same goes for obviously actors and directors and writers when it comes to film. So, but when it comes to the indie space, yes, you get a lot of interaction between indie creators and and the customers, which I have a feeling he's going to say, oh, well, that can be negative because of drama and blah blah blah. But let's be honest, the drama has nothing to do with the customer. Um, the customer can let it affect them, let it affect their opinion, but if they can separate the art from the artist and all that, I mean, obviously, I think that's the best route. But it's also great that you can interact with your favorite indie comic book creators, especially on Twitter and on YouTube. You can literally have conversations with them and hear what they think and what they believe. You're not going to get a lot of that from mainstream creators. You get a little bit more from it from like newer mainstream creators because of Twitter. I mean, more so you're going to just see their political beliefs and all that, but you're not going to get a lot of back and forth with them, especially if they're not on YouTube and actually interacting with the chat. A lot of them don't even do YouTubing, right? It would be really cool if you could have some interactions with some of the creators, but I think that's a net positive. That's a bonus that you get in the indie space is that you can have this with your favorite creator, right? Or someone that you want to buy your book from. So yeah, see what else he has to say.
Now, let's be real here. Comics in the West have declined, and manga from the East has been absolutely crushing it. That's not just because of the stories, it's the culture around it, especially with its creators. Comics in particular can be a needlessly catty and destructive industry. Some creators seem more focused on tearing down others rather than building something meaningful. It's ego driven.
Again, there's a select few maybe in the mainstream that have negative interactions with people. If anything, there are consumers that just have negative opinions about the opinions of mainstream creators, of course, right? If they're pushing an agenda and have opposing political views and all of that. But I wouldn't go as far as saying that it's it's the creators that are the issue, right? Because creators, actors, and all, they historically they've always been, in the majority they've been left leaning, right? Um, but people still idolize and appreciate a lot of these creators because of the content of the end work, not because of their political beliefs and all that. It's just more in your face because of Twitter existing. Previously, unless it was in the tabloids or in a news article, you wouldn't even know what they believe in. And honestly, I miss those times. I wish we didn't see all of that nonsense, on Twitter and all that to an extent, because yeah, there's a good chance you're not going to connect on a personal or political level with most mainstream creators. Just is what it is. The creative space has historically been dominated by left-leaning individuals, um, which is negative to an extent, but if they don't inject their politics and agenda, or well, their politics into their creations and they don't push an agenda, then I don't care what their political leanings are. I just care about what they create, how they create it. So, and the whole ego driven thing, like, again, if you're good at your craft and you end up being a legend in the space, of course, someone's going to have an ego. And it's not necessarily a bad thing either because that ego can actually drive them in their quality, right? Because they want to live up to that ego and their accomplishments. They want to maintain that level. And I mean, let's be honest. I mean, maybe people in the East know about whether or not there's interactions with manga creators, right? But I don't think a lot of Western consumers are interacting with Eastern creators, especially since most of them don't even speak English or speak their mind in in English, right? So in most of them, I mean, the way they work, the way they are paid are not positive, right? And there's a lot of shortcuts and all that that happen in manga because it's just like go, 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 just pump out pages. I don't necessarily want that culture being pushed into Western comics. And I think, well, the mainstream's already pushing quantity over quality, right? And taking shortcuts and all that. I mean, Eric knows about taking shortcuts, but that needs to be pushed out of the creative space. We need to have more of a focus on, hey, let's make the best book possible versus, hey, let's just try to push out as many as possible, especially in the art side. It's easier on the writing side because the writing doesn't take that long. So, yeah, you could pump out story after story and it's not labor intensive, right? You're not physically, doing anything other than typing. So I think that part of that creative culture is a net negative for new Western creators. Let's yeah, I can't stand, how much quantity is pushed and the lack of detail. Like, and I get it, some people, don't want to have like detailed backgrounds and all that. But me personally, like when you see the art of like Dale Keown and all, it's like I want to strive to having that in my book, that level of detail. There are certain creators like Frank Miller that can have a very abstract style of art and not have a lot of details in the background, and it works because it's so unique. But again, I don't think he was pushing quantity. He had his way of creating, and his writing was just so masterful that just it worked so well with his art. So, but yeah, anyway.
Selfish, and it's hurt the relationship with the audience. Believe it or not, they pick up on that type of stuff. And remember, it's supposed to be.
But there is no relationship with mainstream. Again, there is no relationship with mainstream manga artists, to my knowledge, and Western consumers. There probably never will be. Again, maybe, like I said, maybe that's a positive because again, 10, let's say 20, 30 years ago, there wasn't Twitter. There was no interaction, but there was no observance of your favorite creator or actor's beliefs, their thoughts, because it wasn't there for everyone to consume. Yeah, I think that was a good thing. But as a consumer, you got to separate the art from the artist. You should be focused on story and wanting good content. The rest is just noise if you really care about the medium and you want to be entertained.
Fun. I think a lot of this stems from lack of economic understanding.
Wait. Economic understanding? I thought it had to do with the interaction with creators. And now we're diving into economic understanding?
People treat success like it's a zero-sum game, as if one person wins, that means someone else has to lose. But
What does that have to do with Western creators, mainstream creators? See, this is where he's never specific on if he is talking about indie comics or mainstream comics. You need to be specific because they are completely different. Just like I said, you're not going to have a lot of interaction with mainstream creators. You will probably get a lot of interaction with indie comic creators. And there's not a lot of drama even really with mainstream creators that we observe. The drama per se is in indie comics. But to jump to
someone else has to lose. But
since when does okay, maybe he's talking about politics where let's say there's liberals in mainstream comics that want conservatives to lose or the conservative agenda or beliefs to lose, but I don't really see any creators trying to damage one another in the mainstream. They kind of stay in their own lane. So I think he is indirectly taking a shot at some indie creators and how they interact with people or interact with one another. But again, the indie space is not a representative of all of comics. So he needs to delineate whether or not he's talking about mainstream comics or indie comics. But to me, it feels like he's taking some veiled, indirect shots at the indie space. Probably crowdfunding creators, right?
Truth is, the economic pie isn't fixed.
Why does every video have to bring up the economic pie and how it's not fixed? Like, it's the same talking points over and over and over again. I thought the issue was the interaction between creators and consumers or creators and creators. Now we're jumping into the economic pie. Like, kind of pick a lane, maybe add some specifics.
It grows. Someone getting into comics because of a different company doesn't mean that they can't become a fan of yours too.
Doesn't make any sense.
Now, I'm not saying that everyone needs to like everything or be best friends, but the hostility is unnecessary.
Again, I have a feeling he's talking about hostility in the indie community because I don't see a lot of hostility amongst, the known mainstream creator pool.
And it's hurting the culture. When I made the move from being more of a YouTube.
Okay, hurting the culture. Okay. American creative culture is primarily going to be impacted by the mainstream. Naturally, right? Because that's what's mostly consumed. That's what most people are aware of. Indie comics doesn't have a huge cultural impact because it does not have a reach, with the exception of a couple examples, right? The breakouts. But generally, indie comics are unfortunately unknown to the majority of the population. So I don't think any hostility in indie comics is impacting the culture. And of course, he's now talking about YouTubers that are into comics.
Uber to running my own publishing company, one of the biggest things that I had to work on was professionalism. And
He definitely had to work on that, especially since he was calling people white bread N-words a lot, saying he wasn't willing to talk to fat people. Yeah. Uh, yeah, definitely. But a lot of people overlooked or um, just straight ignored his lack of professionalism initially, like monetize your haters and all of that. So I guess I wonder, his first year or so, when he was creating the Rippaverse and then when he initially published it, I mean, is he essentially admitting that he was a negative influence on culture in the comic space because of what he said about people and how he talked and monetizing your haters and all that and drama? I don't know.
I can tell you firsthand, it's paid off. And just to be clear, most of what I'm referring to is outside of the big two mega corporations.
There it is. He's talking about indies. But I thought we were talking about the culture and how new creators are influenced and who's influencing them, right? Is it Western creators or is it Eastern creators? But no, it's about indie creators, which has nothing to do really with manga, right? Um, hmm, isn't that interesting? But again, we don't have that big of an impact on culture. It's the mainstream that does. Why even bring up culture?
They play by a whole different set of rules. You'll know the industry is truly thriving again when we see multiple successful small to medium sized publishers making waves. And that especially includes just individual creators. That's why I always try to encourage those doing independent media. I don't gatekeep information, and I hope that people can learn from my approach. But I'm also humble enough to know I'll be learning from others too, including newcomers with fresh ideas. Now, comics should be fun, and I keep saying that because that's when the West will return to form, when fun, passion, and professionalism become the standard again. Competition is great, but it doesn't.
Okay. You need more than just fun for the industry to thrive. You need quality books. You need known names releasing comics that will catch the attention of the general population. Right? You need a Silvestri Batman comic. You need an Alan Moore comic. You need something that is going to bring people back into the comic stores. It's not going to be unknown creators or new mainstream creators that were hired just to save money, that were outsourced, right? And all of these off the wall storylines and shit art. That is not what's needed. I don't care how fun those stories might be. They are not going to bring more sales. They just simply are not. You need quality and you need name recognition when it comes to the mainstream. If they don't focus on those two, they're not going to get revitalized. Simple. Doesn't matter how fun things are in the mainstream. Same thing with comics, right? You need more than just some fun comics or fun interactions or fun streams. You need quality comics that stand out, that prove that indie comics can match or beat the quality of the mainstream. It could potentially leak into the mainstream, right? Just like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles did. Just like what Image did. You need creativeness, unique IPs, and intriguing characters. It's more than it just simple fun. That sounds silly. Like to say you just need fun. It needs to be fun. Like, come on.
Doesn't mean that it has to be unnecessarily hostile.
Okay. So yeah, clearly, I don't know. I think that's just a lot of hibbity jibbity. Like, I don't know. It's meant for people that don't understand the indie space and they don't understand the business of comics. It's just for people that are just like, oh yeah, that's impressive. You know, like it's I don't know. Uh, let's see what's going on in the chat, man. Larry's having a lot of fun. A lot of fun. A lot of fun. Oh, we have Red. Welcome. Thanks for being here. We have Baki here. Welcome. Thanks for being here. Try to keep up with the chat. Possible. Want his name and location? I don't think so. That's weird. Too Larry Higgins is too scared to fight me inside an MMA cage. He knows I will win the fight, be a referee stoppage. Oh jeez. Clearly he's joking, people. Okay. Oh boy. All right, so this was the other thing I wanted to talk about. How agitators, we have some in the chat, or one, simply can't handle facts. I mean, we saw that. Actually, I didn't pull up the tweet thread, but Larry blocked me on Twitter. But he's here agitating. He couldn't handle my opinions. He couldn't handle the fact that he's been in this space for over 10 years and he still has not made it into the mainstream. which to me means, right, he hasn't proven himself to be a good enough writer to enter a subpar mainstream at this point. He blocked me because of it. But here's another good example of some people that just can't handle facts. And this one's, it's funny. It's just funny. Let's see here. Find it. Here we go. All right. Our friend Edwin Boyette, Chef Boyette. So I have not interacted with him much because I know, this is all a game to him. He's just trying to agitate EVS and others by latching on to the Rippaverse and being basically a cheerleader for him. I mean, he's now one of those guys that has to make several tweets a day, trying to brag and prop up the Rippaverse, which is just not a natural thing for a grown adult to do. It's normal to, maybe retweet something, promote a book or something, but, um, you know, taking the time to do spreadsheets to compare the Rippaverse to CG and tallying up all the money made by Rippaverse is just, it's not normal. But, he tries to come across as an intellectual, uses a lot of big words and all that in his tweets, but he simply can't seem to handle someone that comes in with a level-headed counterpoint. And so here's his tweet. He says, "Congratulations to Eric July and the Rippaverse. Yaira #3 from the Twisted Twins pushed collections to the $2 million mark around 4 p.m. Eastern on April 21st, 2025. The Rippaverse is on pace for its most successful year yet." Because anyone that knows business knows that revenue, aka sales, is the only measurement for success, right? No. Who needs to take expenses and overhead and inventory value into mind? Come on, business, right? So that was one. Again, I'm in corporate business during the day. I have been for now 20 years. So I know a thing or two about balance sheets and all that. So I simply just said, you of course know that revenue, sales, isn't what determines success. You and none of us, for that matter, know his margins or gross profit. Plenty of companies have high revenue figures in the eyes of an average person, but aren't successful, or they aren't succeeding if their margins are minimal, right? If you can't cover your costs, you don't have money left over to, right, take home or reinvest into the company, well, you're not succeeding. You're going to be failing. Now, I'm not saying that's the case for the Riververse. Again, I have no idea. Nobody knows what their margins are. Okay. But we know he has a lot more costs now than he did last year, 2 years ago, or 3 years ago. Why? Well, if let's just say, and I'm just throwing a number out there, it costs him, based on $100 comic and, 500 plus dollar per page cost for all of the, coloring, line art, and all of that. Let's say it costs $50,000 to make a comic. Well, he spent $50,000 potentially, in this scenario on Ice on One, but made like $3 million plus, right? I mean, he also printed 50,000 comics, but that's a whole nother thing. Obviously, he had a lot of extra runway to cover that $50,000 because he made millions. So one book and then $50,000 in costs. And then, of course, the next year, if you release 2 or 3 comics, but you make $2 million, Well, you've got to multiply that $50,000 by 2 or 3. So you would have $150,000 in again, just art costs. We're not talking overhead, we're not talking rent and all of that stuff. For warehouses, we're not talking salaries, we're talking just art costs, right? Cost directly to create this comic. So gonna have to make more, right, to cover that cost. So that variance, that margin of revenue and cost starts to shrink. And so now, let's say in a single year here, you have one, two, three, four, five, six, 7, 8, 9 books. Maybe one of these is a magazine. Let's say it costs less. Let's just not include it. So let's just say there's 8. 8 times 50,000 would be $400,000 in costs versus 2 million in revenue, right? So you have a variance of 1.6 million, which, right, if those were the only costs, like, yeah, that would be fantastic. But again, we don't know his overhead, so total salaries, we don't know rent, we don't know cost of vans, we don't know all of that stuff. But right, that 1.6 million variance versus a 2.5 million variance or 3 million variance, that's significant. So again, if over time those costs continue to increase, but the sales continue to decrease, well, that spells trouble. But the point is, gross profit and margins is what's going to determine the success, not sales. But he's going to push this narrative of, again, for the people that are not educated, that do not understand business, they do not understand balance sheets. It's to just convince them, like, oh yeah, everything's going fantastic. And since he's got higher sales than some of these CG folks or indie creators, he's more successful. That may not be true. There may be creators that are bringing home more margin, more profit, and you know the gross profit per comic is what actually matters. And again, we don't know that. So I think it's just such a silly narrative to push. And it's lacking honesty. Well, me arguing this with a few people in the responses, and again, I did it calmly and professionally, pushed him to block me. Now, if he's so smart and so good with words and can counter any point with numbers and facts, why would he need to block me? Why? Because he can't risk having people prove him wrong in real time. Because some people that may actually think critically may realize that he's full of shit and he's playing the game. But it's like right here. This guy said, the cost associated with spending 8 to 10 hours a day drama farming on YouTube are the hours CG creators could be spending on drawing, printing, and shipping late books to backers. What does that have to do with the original tweet? See, this is that kind of mind sickness that's happening in part of the indie comic space where they're so obsessed with trying to damage the names, of certain creators that they can't even stay on target and they can't even provide a logical counterpoint, right? They move right to drama. They move right to YouTube. And the thing is, yeah, there could be some risk tied to drama or spending time on YouTube. There could be, but it's not a tangible cost, right? We're talking about real dollar costs that can be measured. And the thing is, without YouTube, most of the indie creators wouldn't get many sales, right? They wouldn't be able to get backers. Why? Because they didn't have pre-cultivated following. They didn't have fame, right? And that's kind of ironic since Eric is only in the position he is in because he spent countless hours on YouTube, right? Whether it was music related, complaining about the mainstream, monetizing your haters, he got here and got those sales as a result of spending 8 to 10 hours or whatever on YouTube. It's really ironic. So they didn't have an issue with him doing it. But they have an issue with these folks spending time on YouTube, building relationships with their backers, entertaining their backers, and bringing new people into the space into their campaigns. There's no logic to it. The Peanut Gallery says BA is wrong. Maybe by the way, BYW. Um, YouTube is not where backers come from. They can. They can. Clearly, I got backers from YouTube, right? Because of how generous some of the other indie creators were that allowed me to come on their channel and show their audience my books to pitch to them. And because of that, I got backers from YouTube. It's really simple. It doesn't work for everybody, right? I'm not going to ever have huge live streams. I'm not super entertaining, right? I like to talk about certain topics and all of that, but I might get some backers on my next campaign due to this. Maybe my artist will end up doing a draw stream on here eventually. That would be fun. But it's definitely possible to get organic viewers on YouTube, whether it's directly or indirectly on other channels, and gain backers from it. It's been proven. Many of us in CG, outside of CG, do that. Out of 290 backers I have on his last Kickstarter, only 2 are from YouTube, according to the stats. I mean, I guess that means you're not that good at YouTube. I don't know, or you're not bringing in a lot of new YouTube viewers, but I think part of the problem is you've kneecapped yourself to an extent and like purposely avoided a chunk of the indie market, right? You don't network with, CG, for example. You don't try to get on their channel and be a nice guy and actually prove to folks that your comic is worth buying. So yeah, most of yours are probably just backers from previous campaigns and or from Facebook, Twitter, things of that nature. I mean, probably not Twitter since you just troll on there and constantly create new personas, but yeah, folks can definitely get backers from YouTube. How do you think Eric made his money? How do you think Yellow Flash is going to make his money? Neurotic, anybody that ends up doing a creative project, it's from YouTube. It's just some of us are doing it from talking about and being involved directly in comics versus rage baiting about the mainstream. So yeah, there's other networks, of course. And I encourage backers, or I encourage creators to explore all of the avenues, do everything you can. Don't leave any stone unturned when it comes to promoting your book. Shoot your shot everywhere, of course. You gotta scratch and claw for all your backers. That's what being an indie is all about. Not all of us are in a situation of some of these popular YouTubers. So House of Osborne said you were able to get someone to draw your comic through CG. I am not a drawing artist. I instead, he is a writer. I essentially, yeah. I mean, I just stumbled upon Corey and Clayton Barton, and it was probably because going back, I don't know, 3.5, 4 years when I first got on Twitter, and I'm like, I'm ready to get new cover art for my novel. Initially, I was just going to put it on Amazon. I think I initially followed, probably John Malin, EVS, just because I came across their art. Also, folks like Joe Sontag, Joe Ball, just folks that like I saw their projects. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna follow them, and then they retweeted people's books, and one of them at some point retweeted Kozar, right? Clayton and Corey's campaign at the time. And I was like, oh, this looks really cool. Checked it out, backed it, and I just, looking at their art, I was just like, man, I could really visualize my characters with this style of line art, this style of coloring, just the grittiness of the art. And so that's what triggered me to contact Clayton initially. And I found out, like, he was really busy, and he's, oh, by the way, Corey did all the coloring, but he can also do line art. Reach out to him. Sure as shit, that was the case. Ended up hiring Corey, and he did all the covers, with the exception of the Joe Ball variant and the Skunk Artworks variant. And my project came to life. It had nothing to do with the fact that they were CG. I didn't even really know what CG was about or anything when I first joined Twitter. I saw quality art. I got inspired by it, and I could just visualize my characters in that art. Same thing happened eventually when I saw Skunk Artworks art. When I saw Joe Ball's art, I'm like, I can see them bringing my characters to life in the way that would pay it the most respect. So it had nothing to do with affiliations. It just had to do with the fact that these folks were retweeting comics. They were promoting one another. They were networking. And then again, on my other artists, I found my current artists through networking. It has nothing to do with whether or not they're CG or not. It's just the fact that these people didn't just care about only themselves. They were willing to promote others. I really appreciate that. But because of that, I hired artists, which is awesome. So look for great art on Twitter by indie artists. There's a good chance you're going to stumble across someone that, it just, their art vibes with you. And they may be a good fit. Just go for quality, go for art that speaks with you. Have a conversation with the artist, sit down with them, see if they vibe with you, and take it from there. So Peanut Gallery says, and those who stream with Comicsgate will find out how quickly publishing companies won't take them and how cons won't either. I've done several cons, zero issues. And if a con had an issue with it, I wouldn't want to support them. I wouldn't want to give them my money. And everybody should have an issue with cons banning people based on their political leanings or whatnot, or associations. That's nonsense. That's cancel culture. That's bullshit. So, and a lot of us don't, we're not in this to be mainstream, right? We're in this to bring our projects to life. It might be a bonus if it goes mainstream. But again, we're not here trying to woo and kiss up to the mainstream. That's not our focus. And again, there have been people that have associated with and streamed with CG lately that have gotten into the mainstream, whether or not they consider themselves CG or not. So, yeah, I don't believe that nonsense. Don't say suffice that. Take your time, Larry. Take a breath. Yeah, yeah. Nick in the past, he promoted indie comics, and people stumbled upon creators and books. I mean, it's awesome, and that's what we need more of. And everybody knows, all these conservative content creators and all that. Majority of them don't give a shit about the little guy. They don't give a shit about the indie space. If they did, man, the amount of backers that we could garner in the space would be amazing. But they're focused on themselves primarily and making money. It's sad, but it was awesome that Nick did that. And I hope he does that in the future too. So Kobe Max says, I was watching EVS back before he was in CG. He was destroying roast eco figures on streams. He was hilarious back then. He did draw streams too. I miss those days. Yep. Yeah, a lot of people just came into the space because of comics. 'Cause they love comics. And they're drawn to some of these properties. They don't need to know of anyone's affiliation, and their affiliation should not matter. Most politicians are evil. Not sure why you're focusing on him. I don't have an issue with him. So I think he's the best option outside of Thomas Massey at the moment. So yeah, I'm not. I hate cancel culture. I'm against it. And no, myself and people in CG are not pro cancel culture, and we do not engage in it. You slapped at them in a cancel fashion, they slapped back. Guess you don't like receiving what you give. Kind of karma in a way. So yeah, that was a lot of nonsense there. And then of course, other agitators latched onto that, like Hero Shack, who says I'm a scammer, which is funny because I don't know how I've scammed anybody since I delivered everything I promised. But yeah, and he was like diving into this. He was even DMing me, and then eventually, and just being calm and providing counterpoints, blocked me same day too. It's quite funny. All right, well, let's take a look at some indie comics. Let's promote, right? Got to promote one another. That's what this is all about. All right, so first one we're going to look at is Springball by Shanth and Enjeti. So let's pull this up. All right, so this campaign has 29 days left. It's already hit its initial goal. It's cracked $20,000, and he is creeping up on 400 backers. So let's see what we can do to help him get there. All right, so let's take a look at the trailer first. Nice. So yeah, Shanth is a fantastic artist. He also does trailers and such. But this is an example of what we need more of, is just some really unique properties, in the indie space with some top-notch art quality. And yeah, I mean, you don't get too much better than this. Go back. So let's take a look at what this is all about. So the Springball Terminal Monstrosity campaign will fund the complete rework of the 22-page comic book story that premiered in 2002, plus 20 pages of bonus material. Springball is Ditko and McFarlane's Spider-Man meets Sam Raimi's The Evil Dead. From new lines to new coloring, from new story to new lettering, my work will only be possible with your support. It's going to be oversized, so 8.5 by 11. Yeah, very cool looking character and great art there. So let's see what the story's all about. So in the city of Kingsport, in the heart of Lovecraft's New England, evil comes in many forms. A hero known to the city as Springball has protected the city for 13 years. He needs no sleep, he needs no rest. He has 10 times the strength of a normal man. He can't be destroyed, and he is not human. He ricochets through the city with an ability to bound over tall buildings and deflect speeding bullets. He uses an elastic cable to both launch himself through the city and redirect his trajectory. The cable is equipped with a spherical end piece that serves as both an anchor and a mace-like bludgeon for combat. Springball is an unstoppable sentry of justice. Now he must do battle with a new threat to the innocent of Kingsport. A secret cult has um, has beyond the reach of law enforcement been preying on the innocent in an attempt to merge the vile silence of eugenics with the blasphemous mysticism born from an ancient race of ocean dwelling leviathans. When reckless science is combined with this ancient inhuman knowledge, an evil is unleashed that will upend the city of Kingsport and change the nature of Springball's fight forever. So yeah, that's a perfect example of a very unique story and a fantastic detailed pitch right there. So you get some Lovecraftian vibes, supernatural vibes, and just some classic, comic book storytelling. So this looks really, really good. Let's check out some more of the art here. But yeah, they have the throwback edition, deluxe edition. Got Springball #1 with a print, both signed, and also Springball with an inkhead sketch. So yeah, definitely go check this out. Let's see what we can do to help him get to 400 backers. All right, next one we're going to look at is 7 Amens Before Sundown by Mr. Tom Tuttle, who was in the chat. Let's pull this up. So this is on Fund My Comics. So welcome to Half a Rock Hill. I can't wait to have you over for dinner. So this is a Western with vampires, I believe. Let's check out the trailer. Awesome. So yeah, this is art done by Kristen Rossi, who's fantastic. He's done quite a few books with Alterna, there with Peter Samedi. So he's got a lot of awesome properties under his belt. But yeah, Tom is getting close to 6,500 at 155 backers. So let's see what we can do to get him maybe closer to 160 and get him to that $6,500 mark there. So let's see what this campaign's all about. So how far would you go for excuse me. How far would you go for love? What would you do? Who would you kill? Sawyer Bain was a man of the gun and cut a long red ribbon across the West until something happened that made him put his guns down. He found the love of a good woman, found a faith he didn't know he had, and became a man of the soil. Now he must take up his guns again. His wife has vanished, and the trail leads to a town called Half a Rock Hill. In Half a Rock Hill, it's pretty quiet during the day, but it really comes to life when the sun goes down. It's a grisly, ghoulish feast of love, death, and vengeance. Tom Tuttle and Kristen Rossi splattered out across 44 pages of story. Choose from full color Grindhouse edition, featuring a senses shattering cover by Graham Nolan, the black and white Till Death Do Us Part edition, with a heart ripping cover by Peter Gilmore. Nice. Or, as with the age old Marianne versus Ginger question, why choose when you can have both? Let's take a look at this art. So yeah, that's the Peter Gilmore cover there, which is awesome. Yeah, very, very good, high quality art tied to this project. So for folks that are into westerns as well as zombies, this is definitely your cup of tea. This looks great. Very cool. So yeah, he's got quite a few options here. Lettering by Eric Weathers, and also some logo work by Von Klaus. So fantastic team tied to this. Yeah, only $50 for both books. And you can also support Fund My Comic, right? Which supported the canceled Johnny Rockets with his Maniac campaign. So definitely go back that as well while you're in Fund My Comic. All right. And then the last one we're going to look at is Demi-Foot, Urban Sasquatch, which is a sign up by Darin Wagner. So free to sign up. So definitely everybody go give an email and sign up to this. Let me pull this up. Mm. All right. So this one is on Indiegogo. So Demi-Foot, Urban Sasquatch. Senses shattering, pulse pounding, blood pumping, nuclear brain damage. Darin Wagner and John Dillard. Pretty sure everybody knows John Dillard lately. So yeah, definitely check this out and support him. Let's check out the trailer. Awesome. So yeah, everybody go sign up to that. Again, free to sign up. Right. Check in with the chat here. So yes, I definitely agree. Between the two candidates we had, definitely the least evil. Um, so no, I wouldn't. I'm not a libertarian. Don't have any issue with libertarianism for the most part. I'm more of a traditional conservative. I don't really talk politics and all that, but um, essentially my values and beliefs more so line up with Russian conservatism. So more on the traditional side of things. So I never said they did. I just think it's kind of funny and ironic. But at least you admitted that you were wrong. That's big of you. Well done. Ah, how's it going, Yo24? Thanks for being here. Yeah, that's kind of all the topics I had for tonight. So, unless anybody else has any other topics, things you'd like me to cover, or if you just have any questions in general, go ahead and shoot and we can discuss that. But I guess do a quick update in regards to my projects. So, right now I am doing two things. So, I am essentially getting the novels prepared for Amazon. So now that the campaign's closed, I'm going to reformat those to release those on Amazon, obviously to reach a wider audience and also be able to get it to people more, I guess, so that it can be more affordable for folks that are overseas. So obviously, I won't be able to do the premium versions through Amazon, which is good. I mean, I want the premium versions to only be for the backers, right? But I'll have to do smaller format, smaller font most likely, and I mean the quality of the Amazon printing is not fantastic, unfortunately, or the options for lamination. But yeah, gonna get those reformatted, try to get those released this summer, just so that I can hopefully make some extra money that I can put directly towards the comic, right? pay for line art pages. And then on the comic side of things, so I am through, I'm on page 30 of the script. So yeah, I think I've crossed the halfway mark at least. But having a blast working on that. And again, I've went back and revised all the pages up until page 30 several times, making adjustments and whatnot. So just constantly getting inspired and getting ideas from films, from comics, and applying those to the comics. So always trying to improve it. So as pages are going to get worked on in the future, constantly looking to make improvements so that once that page is drawn and lettered, we don't need to make adjustments and it's the best it can be. So, but yeah, excited. Hopefully, the next couple months to get a sign up page going. Give you guys some preview pages. Get you guys some preview to the art. It's going to be fantastic. You guys are going to love it. So I'm very, very, very excited about the project. And but yay, according to some, I'm not a real comic book creator. So I'm creating a comic. And one thing that's funny too, going back to that hero gentleman that a lot of people don't recognize the name, but it's like he's constantly asking, when your comic going to be done? How long is it going to take you? It's going to take you years. You're going to be late, blah blah blah. And it's like, not even a sign up page. You're already again. They're constantly looking for a gotcha. Like, oh, you were late. It's like, dude, like you're so obsessed with whether or not other people are late or not, like versus whether or not their books are actually good. What does the art look like? Like that's what my focus is on. I am taking my time. I don't care if this takes me a year and a half. Like I want to impress people. I want my backers to love these books. So not rushing anything, but having a lot of fun throughout the creative process. So um I think one of these days we'll pull up the script so you guys can kind of get an idea of how I format my scripts and how I do it. And what I'd like to do, potentially in the future is, once my artist is done with, his existing project and things free up and he starts working on line art, eventually maybe do a draw stream once a week where you can actually view him drawing some of the panels. We can talk about the creative process tied to the project, talk about the writing, talk about the story a bit. So I think that would be fun to do that occasionally. And then I also still plan on doing a monthly panel promotion show. So maybe I'll get that going in May. Start bringing people onto the channel. Kind of get out of my habit of just streaming by myself, but just never been one to kind of reach out to folks and bring them on. But tried to do that eventually. So yeah, that's what's going on with Vigilantes Creed. Um, with me. So this week I finished up rereading A Dame to Kill For, obviously masterpiece, as well as Born Again. Fantastic. Everybody should read both of those books. Shows Frank Miller's, how versatile he is, and how he can switch from more of a superhero vigilante to a more gritty, gray area vigilante or characters, I guess you could say. And then this week's pickup is Alan Moore's Swamp Thing. So, book 4, Saga of the Swamp Thing. So, very excited to dig into that. I recently reread issue number 1 of his Swamp Thing run. So, again, try to consume writing from several different writers and try to apply the best of everyone's work to my book. So, let's see who else is in the chat here. We also have Dante Erics. Thanks for joining. Appreciate it. I almost feel like I shouldn't shut the stream down because folks are having too much fun in the chat going back and forth. But I'm out of topics. Somebody gives me something. But anyways, I appreciate everybody being here. I appreciate the interaction with the chat, the support. Seems like everybody had fun in the chat. Always fun to have an agitator in the chat. So maybe someday Larry will build up the courage to debate me. I don't know, but yeah. But if anyone's looking for a stream to go to after this, I believe for those that like that particular type of entertainment, well, there's EVS's Trashcast. I think that's still going live right now. Mandy is also streaming her Trailer Park Conspiracies. So definitely go check out either of those. I'm not sure if Joe Sontag is still streaming. Oh, but we have Bill Mouse on Comic Book Radio over on Peter Sameti's channel. So there's a lot of awesome streams going on right now. So there's also a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles stream on Bionic Bros channel. So yeah, plethora of different content for folks to check out after this. So definitely go do that. Support some more YouTubers, some more creators. Go back some indie comics, please. And because yeah, anytime anyone goes and backs a campaign as a result of watching the stream, like that's such a great feeling. So definitely want to do what I can outside of retweeting stuff on Twitter. Yeah, thanks for being here. And yeah, everybody have a good rest of your week, a good weekend, and God bless. Thank you guys. Take care.